We'll be talking about Access databases, and Access databases is a product made by Microsoft. It looks a lot like Excel in that it's table-based, but Excel is a bunch of independent tables, and Access has the tables can be connected to each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a database for, let's say we're running a spa, so a spa that does like hair and nails and massage and that kind of stuff. So what we'll do is we'll we'll open up the Access database. So let's say new, and then it's one of the Microsoft products. It's the top one here, Access database, and I'll call it a spa. And this one spa. Call it a spa. And then I'll double click on it to open it up. So Access kind of assumes you know a little bit about databases. And it opens it up for you. It almost, I think it almost opens it up. It does too much thinking for you. But when you go to say create and then click on table, it creates a table for you. And like normally you would think that you would give, when you're creating a table, you would give the table's name, and then the table's going to have a bunch of columns, and you would give the column names, and then once you set up the table, then you can start entering data. The way Microsoft Access works is it lets you fill that stuff in later. It actually puts you right into this box, and it's asking you to start typing in data. So let's say, for example, for the spa, our first table will be our clients. So our clients will have a first name, a last name, an email address, and a phone number, let's say. So we could actually start typing in data right now. So I'll start typing in a first name. And an email address. And I'll make some room because this one will add a phone number. And then over here I can make some room. Okay. And then I could add, you know, and just go down the list. I could add another person. And I'll add one more person. And I'm not required to put a phone number in, so I'll leave that phone number out. So one of the things that Microsoft Access is doing is it's giving us a field we didn't really ask for called the ID field. And what it likes to do is for the database, it likes to give a unique number for every record in the database. That way, because maybe we have two people named Jerry Seinfeld, two different people, and we have to somehow tell them apart, so they have a unique identifier here to tell them apart. So we're basically, it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. We're keeping data about people right now. So, so now we'd like to give names like first and last and email and phone. And we'd also like to name the table something like clients. So we can go and edit the column names if we want. And we can go like this. Change this to first. Change the header here, this one to last. This one will be email. And this one will be phone. Okay. And now, if we want to change the name of the table, we actually have to go and save the table. So if we go to save it, it'll ask it the name, and we'll call it clients. Okay. So we now have a table. We have a table called clients. And then everything we make along the way, we're going to be making tables which have data about our business. Then we could make forms about nicer forms to look at the data in our table. And then we could also make queries. We'll also do that today. We'll make queries. We can ask questions to the database. So what we now have is we have our clients table. It has an ID field, a first name, a last name, an email, and a phone number. Okay, so we're done with this table for now. And now we'll make a table of services that we provide. So now we can just go to create and then hit table, and now all of a sudden we're ready to make a new table. So for the services we provide, we'll have a service, a price, and then how many minutes it takes, how long the service takes. So the service can be like hair, which has a price of, let's just say $50. Oh, I'll make this field a currency field. So let me delete this table. Okay. So now let me create a new table. Create a table. And the first field will be the service we provide, like here. And then the next table will be, I'll make it currency. So this would be like the haircut would be $50, and then the duration will be a number, and this will be in minutes. So I'll say a haircut takes 30 minutes. Okay. Minutes is the name of the column. Price and service. Okay, and now we could add some more services. We do nails. And what's a good price for nails? Have an idea?
I paid 40 for each item.
40?
Yeah.
Okay, and how long do they take?
It took an hour.
An hour? So let's say 60 minutes. And then we can also do massage. Let's say $80 for 60 minutes. This should be 60 keeps. Okay, I'll delete this. Okay. So now for our services, we provide hair, nails, and massage. And we can add stuff later. And then we have information about each of those, how much it costs and how long it takes. So we have two tables. Actually, we should give this a name. We should call this services. And we have two tables, and they're not connected to each other. It's just two different sets of data. Really no connection yet. So we'll change the name of this to services. So that's the services table. Now we're going to create a third table that is connected to one of these tables. We're going to have what we decided last class, we decided to call them specialists. That's the people who work for us and provide these services. So we'll have a table about information about them, what's their name, what's their phone number, and that kind of thing. So we'll create a table called specialists, but we're going to have them connected. The only types, one of the things we'll do, we'll have their first name, their last name, the type of service they provide, but the only services they're going to be able to provide are the ones that our spa provides. We can't make up stuff. So the way we'll make the tables connected, we're going to do a lookup table, a lookup field in the table. So again, we'll go create table. So now we're creating a new table. We're going to have a first name, so and now we're going to have we have a first name, now we're going to have a lookup table, the service this person provides. We right click on the top of the column and we go lookup and relationship. And then we check the box that they give us. I want to look up the field in another table or query. And then we say, out of the services table, I want to pick the service field. So remember, we've already defined the services table, and it had 3 fields in it: the service, the price, and how many minutes it takes. we can pick any fields out of here, and we just hit this arrow and it throws them over here. Whatever shows up here is what we're going to see in the menu. So we're just gonna slide the service over, and then we slide the service over, and then we're done for this one. We say the next. We could list them in ascending or descending order. We'll stay with ascending. And it's gonna look like that. It's gonna be a pull-down menu that says hair, nails, and massage. And then we say next, and we can name this field. We'll call it service. You could call it service performed, but service is good enough. And then we hit finish. And then the name of this table is specialist. Those are our specialists. Okay, so now, when you go to type data into the service field, it only allows, it has this pull-down menu, it only allows services that we provide. So if you wanted to type in some new service, like a pedicure, if you wanted to type pedicure in there, you can't, because we don't do pedicures. What you could do is, and I'll do this in a second, you could go over to your services, add pedicure there, and then come back here, and then pedicure will be there. But right now, you couldn't just type it in. So this is a way of our database preventing us from putting in bad data. So I could say this person does hair, then I could say the same person does nails. Now remember, I think the last time we talked about databases, we said we could have multiple services for each person, but then we'd have to know in advance what's the maximum number of services each person can do. So then we could start doing rows like this, but then we're wasting data because we keep typing in the same field. It's kind of a trade-off. And when you get into more deeper database design, you can come up with a way around it. But this will work fine for now. And then what we could do is we could add another person. Well, you know what, maybe what I'll do is I'll create a form at this point. So now we have two tables, and they're somewhat connected to each other. And what we'll do is I'll create one more table. This is, we'll create a table of appointments. And so the appointments are going to be, what's involved in an appointment? Well, an appointment's going to have a client, a service, and a specialist, and then plus a date and time. And that way all the tables will get tied together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new table. Create table. And now the first lookup field is going to, we're going to do a lookup and relationship. We'll click next. We're going to take from client, go to next, we'll take the client's last name. And next, ascending order. So these are the possible people for that field. And we'll call that client. Call that column client, and we're finished. And the table's name will be appointments. Okay, the next column will be another lookup. We're going to do, next, we're going to say the specialist. I can put names for these specialists. Hold on, so let me cancel out of here. Specialist. I didn't put first name and last name. Sorry about that. First and last name. So now, if I go back to the appointments table, I can look up.
Did you do last name or first names for that lookup?
What? I'm sorry?
For the lookup, for the client, did you do last name or first names?
I did last names. Is that what you had?
Well, I saved mine from before, I did the ID numbers, so I'm just gonna.
Okay, yeah,
just
I'm
modifying it.
doing slightly different. So,
Yeah, I'm just
okay.
modifying it.
So now I'm doing for specialist. Now, one of specialist. It's going to take me to. Okay, how about now? So back to appointments. So I'm going to do a lookup. Specialist, last name. Okay, I'm going to copy over the last name and hit next. And ascending order is fine. It's going to Okay, now I'm going to do another field, and I'm going to say service. And I'm going to take the service field from the services table, and ascending order is fine, and those are the services. And I'm going to call this service. Okay, and then we need a date and time field, which I'll call the day. If you put in the word date, that's a reserved word for a database, so it might start complaining about that. So I'm going to say the day, and then I'm going to also say the time, which is also going to be a date and time here. I'll call this time. Okay, so now I can pick a client, a specialist, and a service, and with the date and time I can pick a date like tomorrow, and for time I can put in like 2 p.m. And then I can make another appointment. Today, at 9 p.m. Like that. Okay, so now these tables are connected to each other. So we now have, data in the columns, we have data in for the clients, we have data for services we provide, those are unrelated. Specialists are actually connected to the services because the specialists can only perform what we consider services. Appointments are connected to all 3 of these tables because we can only make appointments for clients we actually have. We can only make appointments for services that we actually do. And then we have to pick a specialist that we have on staff. Put those all together and that becomes an appointment. So this is all the data we need for an appointment. We need the date, the time, what's happening, who's the customer, and who's the specialist. Okay, so now we can add, we can now create a form. So a form is a way for looking at and entering data into our tables. So what we can do is we can say, we'll create a form to add a new specialist. So let's do a create, and then go to create, let's click on the specialist table, and then we'll just say create and hit form. Now what this form is doing, I wish it wasn't so big, but okay. What this form is doing is it's allowing us to go through. This is a form where we can bring up a particular specialist by hitting these arrows down here. We can walk through this, there's arrows below this. And then for that specialist, we have appointments for that specialist. So we can say for a particular specialist, their schedule will come up and then we can start adding appointments for them. So let's add another appointment for this particular specialist. So for this specialist, we can now add in another appointment using this form. So let me make sure we save this form. Save. I'll give it specialist appointments. So this is a form for adding appointments to a particular specialist. So now what we can do is we can say this person's got a annual appointment on the 13th at 3 o'clock. And if we wanted to go to another specialist, we could go down here and go back and forth. I'm sorry, I want to go down further. Okay. So now that should have taken that. We might have to refresh the data. We'll refresh all, and now that appointment showed up. We can make an easier form too for just adding a new specialist by saying create and then go to the form wizard. And then the form wizard, the wizard asks us a bunch of questions that we use to solve and answer, put a form together. So we could say that for our specialist, we want to enter we'll enter all the fields that go with the specialist and hit next. And we'll call this the new specialist. The new specialist form. So this is a form if you want to add a new specialist to our system. So this is just, it's another way of entering the data, but we're basically saying, these are specialists that we have, and you can make these boxes smaller and bigger and change the colors on top. We can save that for another time. But with these arrows down here, you could walk through all the specialists you have, and then this one, this arrow with this like kind of orange box is your way of saying, I want to add a new person. So we could add a new specialist by doing this. So I can walk through our specialists. So right now, what do we have? We have two specialists. But if I go to this new one, then the ID field, that's that randomly generated number the database gives us, that one we can't fill in. It's just letting us know we're creating a new one, and then we can put in a first name, a last name, and a new service that they do. So this is a form for updating our database. So I can say, so I could say Samantha Jones does massage, and it should be entered in our system. We may have to hit the refresh button again.
Where's the refresh button?
Yeah, let me, where's specialist? Here. So it's not here yet. If you go to home, and then you see where it says refresh all.
Yeah.
So that's basically where there's data. Let's see, why is this not happening? Maybe I have to go off that one, so let's see if it's there. Yeah, okay. So you just have to, after you enter it, you have to just go to the next one, like as if you're entering a new one, and then when you hit the refresh all, it'll be there. So this is a form for adding new specialists. This is a form for a particular specialist if you want to add new appointments. So you couldn't use this one to add a new specialist, but you could use this for a particular specialist. You can add new appointments. So now, just to get a look at how the tables are tied together, you could go to, if you go to Database Tools, and then there's this button here that says Relationships. It kind of draws a picture of our database. So, so these are the tables in our database. And so basically what we're saying is that, so it's basically a bunch of, like, think of it like Excel tables. But we have our clients, these are the fields in our clients, and then each client is tied to an appointment. That's really the only connection that clients have to this table. Appointments are connected to clients, specialists, and also services. And then they also have a date and a time field, which is separate from all the other tables. The services are connected to the client, and it's also connected, this is a line that goes behind this table down to here, down to the specialist. So services are connected to, specialists are connected to services because they provide a service, and the only services they're allowed to do are in this table. So that's a kind of a table dependency relationship graph. And then another thing we can do is we can add queries to our table. So if we go back to, let's see, we can do a create. So what is a query? So a query would be, let's say we had a number of appointments. Do we have enough appointments to kind of make it interesting? We have 3 appointments. Okay. So suppose, for example, in our database right now, we have 3 different appointments, which I like to keep it small, but I want to have enough to make a point. Suppose, for example, this is April 13th is tomorrow. And let's just say our building had a flood, and we need to notify all of our clients that we're closed tomorrow. So what information would we need to get out of our database? We would need to know, you know, like let's say we're going to notify them by email. We would need to know the email address of all the customers. That would be nice to know the first name. We'd like to say, hey, Mary, your appointment tomorrow is been canceled. So we'd like to know the first name, the email address of all the customers that have an appointment tomorrow. Now, does that all appear in some table somewhere? Well, you might say, okay, well, if I look at the appointments table, I can see with my eyes, it's this person and this person. But try to imagine that this is thousands of appointments, and they're not in any kind of an order, and you don't want to go through this with your eyes and miss it. So what we can do is we can create a query that prints out the data that we care about, and we can even make the query ask us, what day do you care? And we can type in a date. Once we type in the date, it will then print out the report for that particular date. So that's what a query is. It's not a table of data, but it's an answer about data in our tables. So we go to create, and then we'll use the query wizard. And we'll pick the first choice, the simple query wizard. We'll hit OK. So now, what fields do we want? It's going to come from different, it's going to be different fields in different tables. So from our client table, what do we want? We wanted the first name and the email address, right? So we wanted from the client, let's see, from the client table, we want the first name and the email address, because that's not in the appointment table. Then what we want is from the appointment table, we want the day, the time. We'll tell the person your 2 o'clock appointment has been canceled, and we'll have the specialist. Your 2 o'clock appointment with so and so has been canceled on such and such a date. Anything else we need? That should be enough for this query. So now we go to next, and next again, and we'll call this the appointment by date query. And then we'll say finish. So right now, we don't have any criteria on it. So right now, it just spits out all the data, right? I didn't say any for any specific date. So now, this is not a table in our database, right? There is no table that has the customer's first name, the customer's email, and the day of their appointment and the time of their appointment. These 3 fields came from the appointment table. These 2 fields came from the client table, but it's where those records were connected to each other. So it just printed out the whole, it basically printed out every appointment that there is. But wouldn't it be nice if we could say, well, I only want the ones for April 13th. Yeah, only the ones from April 13th. So what we can do is we're still, this is a query that prints out everything, but we can enhance the query by so here's our query over here on the left. If you right click on it and go to the design view, what it's basically saying down here is the report is going to be the first name from the client's table, the email from the client's table, and this checkbox means you want to see it. We might have a field that nobody wants to see. We'll put one in a second. And then we have the day field from the appointments, the time field from the appointments, and the specialist field from the appointments. And that one's checked too. So if I scroll over, okay. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to say we'll make one change. You see where this says, instead of the report printing out all 5 columns, the first name, the email, the day, the time, and the specialist, we would like to turn this into a report where when you run it, it'll ask you what day do you care about. You'll type in a day, and then the report will print only the things for that day. Now, if suppose you put in the date April 13th, do you need to keep seeing April 13th, April 13th? You don't need it, right? Because you only care about that one day. So what we're going to do is we're going to uncheck this box, because this one, the day. We're going to uncheck this box, and then you see this line that says criteria. If we put a date in here, like April 4/13, 2012, it'll just print out all the appointments for that date. So I'm going to do that first. So So this is what's sometimes called hard coding it. So if I put a check mark here and then under criteria I say 4/13/2012, if I now run this query, I could just double click on it. Can I check the date involved? Oh. Well, anyway, never mind. It has to do with getting the syntax perfectly correct. But one thing we can do here. Oh, I'm sorry.
You put it in time.
I put it in time. I put it in the wrong spot. Okay. Let's put it again. Sorry. So this would be 4/13/2012. Now.
You did 113.
4/13/2012. Okay, now if I double click on this, it just prints out the appointments from the 13th. And then I decided to not print out the date. So at this point, if you wanted to, for some odd reason, if you wanted to have the hard-coded 13th, you could call this query appointments on April 13th. And then anytime you run it, you'll see the April 13th appointments. But that doesn't make much sense, because after the April 13th, you'll probably never run this query again, right? So what we'd like to be able to do is have the query ask us, what date do you care about? And we can type in any date, and then it'll print out that one. So what we can do, instead of saying the criteria, if I right-click on this, design view, instead of putting in the date, meaning it has to equal, the day has to equal April 13th, I can put in a question by having open paren, and then type in a question, enter date, and then close paren. So what I'm basically saying right here is, I'm basically saying when this query is run, I'm going to ask the person to enter a date. So a window will pop up saying enter a date. The person will type in a date. They can type in any date they want, and then we'll just see a report for that date. So now if I run it, if I click on this query, go over here and just double click on it, it's now this window popped up asking me to enter a date. So now I can type in 4/13/2012 and hit OK. And that's the 4/13/2012 report. I could click on it again. Close it. Okay, I could click on this, and now I could put in 4/12/2012, and that gives me the report for 4/12. And if I wanted to, I could put the date back in. If I go to the design view, I could check this box again, so that we'll see the day. But then if I go and click on it, it'll ask me for a date. I can say 4/13/2012, and it gives us the report. And now, because I'm showing the date again, it's going to keep saying what the date is. So maybe you do want to see it, but obviously, since this is a by date, since this is an appointment by date query, whatever date you typed in is going to be the same the whole way down, but maybe you'd like to see it. So you can see it or not see it, it's up to you. You can check the box or uncheck it. And so now if you think about it, you could add many, many forms to your, so the forms are used for entering data, and you could also scroll through the data. You could bring up the specialists and just scroll through them and see what all their appointments are for the day. But you could also do that to add new specialists or add new appointments to a specialist. So that way, maybe a specialist can sit down and add appointments for themselves and not hurt all the other specialists by accidentally adding their appointments. They could just go to the specialist appointments, go to their name, and just add appointments. And then we can make a set of common queries that our database system would ask. And then if some odd thing came up, like, yeah, the building burned down and we had to have a special query, you could just create a query very quickly once you get good at creating queries. So we can make a bunch of tables. The tables can be connected together. You could go to the database design view, the relationship view, to see how they're connected. And then you can make a bunch of queries about the data, and you can make forms for entering new data. So we kind of did this database pretty quickly, but are there certain flaws in this database? Things that Access doesn't know about, but we as human beings do know about with this database. I just wanted to point out a few. Is there anything like you can see that if you were running at this business, there might be problems? So for example, we can make appointments for dates in the past, right? The thing doesn't stop us,
Yeah.
right? It does, see, we're running a business that we should only be making appointments in the future, but you might have a different application where you want to put stuff in the past. Maybe you're doing accounting of when bills came in or when they, you might want to put dates in the past, but right now we don't block that. We could also book the same client for the same date and time for a haircut and nails, and you can't do both at the same time. We know you can't. We know a specialist couldn't do a haircut and do nails at the same time, but Access doesn't know that. So we'd want to put in more protection against putting in bad data. We don't want to book appointments on the same time as each other, because then we have to cancel with the customer. That would be like a little bit more sophisticated. But for now, we just have these tables with the data connected, ways to enter new data into the tables, and then ways to ask questions about the data using queries. So any questions about these topics? I think it's a good place to cut off, and then we could cover more advanced topics later. But any questions about these topics? No? Okay, good.